Good evening all. I am indeed James. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you this evening with one of SBS's most important stakeholders, FECCA, and of course all of its members. Thank you. I'd like to add my acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I was very moved by the welcomes we received over the last couple of days. If I might say, I think that the growing connection between Indigenous and multicultural Australia is a very, very positive sign, and I hope it's something that we can nurture in the coming years together. Can I also recognise the many dignitaries and special guests who are here this evening? In particular, Mary, Mohammed. Thank you both for your leadership. Thank you, Mary, for your generous words this morning about SBS. It meant a lot. Can I please also acknowledge my wonderful SBS colleagues who are in the room tonight? It's always such a pleasure to see you work. SBS is once again proud to be the primary media partner of this FECCA's National Conference, especially in this FECCA's 40th year. Now, SBS television turns 40 next year. And I think it's pleasing to think that both FECCA and SBS, despite being middle-aged, remain as vital and as relevant as they were in their 20s. I only wish I could say the same about myself. Look, rather self-evidently, I stand here before you today, a white, middle-aged, able-bodied man, who, because of those characteristics, has enjoyed relative advantage in this country. I recognise that I've been able to open many of the doors I've worked through in my personal and professional life with not much more than a gentle nudge. My efforts are no greater than anyone else's. They're no greater than Mary's, who this morning spoke about her own challenges with doors. People who, because of the simple matter of who they are, how they look, where they're from, how they identify, or what they believe, have faced barriers to their participation. My lived experience is not that of many Australians. Now, let's be in no doubt, we've heard it many times today, Australia is a tremendous multicultural nation, a nation with the foresight to create a multicultural public broadcaster many years ago in SBS. However, I believe we still have a way to go to ensure there is equal opportunity for all. SBS is fully committed to pursuing this outcome. Now, my mother's experience in coming to this country was vastly different to my own growing up here. We've heard many stories of my mother's today, coming to Brisbane in the 1950s from northern Italy. Yes, that's true. She didn't speak English, and she had the surname Zanottini. And to this day, she tells stories of the discomfort of separation and exclusion. But despite a rough start, her passion, her love for Australia is palpable. It is perhaps my mother's experience that is one of the most influential in informing my own views of the power and importance of inclusion. We, all of us, are wonderfully different in this nation. These differences are at the heart of who we are, and when we champion these differences, we realise their benefits. SBS has been doing this for many years with your support, inspiring Australians to understand each other better and respect each other more, with the aim of creating a more inclusive society. We're proudly one of Australia's most trusted media organisations. The trust that we enjoy is central to who we are, and the unrivalled connections that we have with Australia's diverse communities, the communities that you all represent, enable us to tell impactful stories like no other media organisation. We've always believed that a society in which we all belong, are all able to contribute, and that doesn't leave anyone behind is a good thing. It's a good thing because it feels good, but it also makes good economic sense. I recently announced the findings of a report we commissioned from Deloitte Access Economics, which quantifies for the first time in this way the clear economic imperative for improving social inclusion in Australia. I'd like to thank Mary and FECCA for their contribution to this report. Now, Australia has a well-earned reputation as an inclusive society across a range of measures, but we can do better. And if we can emulate countries that do better, we all benefit. The report outlines that an annual $12.7 billion economic benefit could be guaranteed and generated for Australia from areas including improved employment and health outcomes, increased workplace productivity, and the reduced cost of social services. By this we mean better inclusion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Of the almost 7 million people from 270 ancestries that have migrated to Australia since 1945, the 50,000 households with same-sex couples, the 1 in 5 Australians that have a disability. We mean more women in senior leadership positions. Greater inclusion not only avoids the costs incurred when people are excluded, it harnesses our diversity, providing fuel for innovation in our economy. Creativity, tenacity, vision, leadership are critical drivers of innovation. And unsurprisingly, these characteristics are not unique to any one community. They are not determined by where you were born, your family ancestry, the language you speak, your gender, sexual orientation, or faith. The more we embrace difference in our teams, in our workplaces, in our communities, the greater the economic dividends for all, and not just those people being included. Now, I know that if you're in this room with us, you get this. You've always intuitively understood that diversity is a fact and inclusion is a choice, and then when we make that choice, we all benefit. I am, though, hopeful that armed with some economic research, we can all prosecute this case with even more conviction. A link to the research has been shared via the SBS Australia Twitter handle this evening. I encourage you to take a look at it. And now's when I take a moment to brag briefly, ever so briefly, about the range of services to demonstrate our commitment to reaching Australians' communities wherever they are. Over the last year, we've reached more Australians than ever before, including more than 12 million viewers across our free-to-air television offers every month. 12 million. We've now 5 free-to-air channels, including the recently launched SBS World Movies, which features at least 50% of its content in a language other than English. We commission about 450 hours of first-run programming each year, in addition to our extensive news, current affairs and sports programming. Speaking of sports, we are now the undisputed free-to-air home of basketball in Australia. We're with full coverage of the NBL, including both the NBA and WNBA leagues. Basketball is a great sport for connecting SBS with younger multicultural audiences. We're very proud of that new relationship. 70% of the content on SBS and SBS Viceland is culturally and linguistically diverse. We provide radio and digital services in 68 languages and continue to grow this offer, especially via our digital offering. We have 7 million registered users across our digital platforms, a figure that's grown 40% in the last year alone, with access to more than 7,000 hours of programming on our distinctive streaming platform, SBS On Demand. Bear with me, 50 more stats to go. Listen, I'm not going to spend the next 10 minutes listing our services, but I wanted to take the opportunity to describe how SBS has evolved over the last 40 years to reflect the changing face of modern Australia. Now, being the Managing Director of a media organisation today is in equal measure exhilarating and terrifying. We operate in a sector that continues to experience unprecedented change. New technologies are providing opportunities to create content and engage audiences in new and different ways. The media landscape is also welcoming a steady stream of new players, increasing competition for audiences and dramatically changing the way we all consume content. And whilst international competition is undoubtedly good news for audiences and drives the whole local industry onto even greater ambitions, we need to ensure that global formats don't crowd out and make the production of local stories for local audiences untenable. Any society's culture is nurtured by its capacity to tell stories about itself, to describe local fears, aspirations and truths, to see itself reflected and for there to be a safe space for discussion and deliberation. We need a regulatory environment that values the local industry, local stories, and in particular that allows public broadcasting to thrive. And in a social media world of increasingly polarised views, many of them unencumbered by fact, we need a regulatory construct which affords people access to independent, trusted and impartial news and current affairs, such as that provided by SBS. Storytelling is a powerful vehicle with which to make people feel included, connected and empowered. Australia is not homogenous, and neither are the many communities that make up our rich diversity. Too often, when it comes to reporting and representation in the media, the nuances of communities are not reflected, and stereotypes prevail. Every community is made up of individual experiences. Using human stories as a way of approaching big and often confronting subjects, sometimes from outside your world, helps to create empathy and understanding. SBS News covers these stories every day, like that of Jasmine Baker, the daughter of Lebanese parents who migrated to Australia in 1970. She, as a child, struggled with her nationality and saw it as a stigma. Now at 29, Jasmine is a bilingual storyteller in Arabic and English. She works with social enterprise Lost in Books in Sydney's Fairfield, a suburb where more than, get this, 180 languages are spoken. The bookshop offers titles in more than 40 languages and caters for young children up to teenagers, with a space for families to read and play together. It's a truly uplifting example that showcases the efforts of communities to preserve their language whilst helping new arrivals to settle in a new suburb. Our recent series, The Hunting, was the most successful original drama in the history of SBS and an exemplar of our increasingly nuanced exploration of culture. The series took a universal and confronting theme, online safety and behaviour, and allowed the exploration of multicultural Australia to live through the characters, providing a realistic reflection of our society without being contrived. The series was also accompanied by a series of educational resources produced in partnership with the eSafety Commissioner and launched through the SBS Learn portal. These were distributed to literally tens of thousands of parents and teachers to assist constructive conversations about an issue that affects so many of us. We're particularly proud of NITV's award-winning Little J and Big Cuz, a contemporary children's animation series which provides Indigenous children the far too seldom opportunity to see themselves portrayed positively in mainstream media, and which also encourages non-Indigenous children to take off the opportunity to see a positive portrayal of Indigenous children. As a media industry, we need to move away from a tick box approach to inserting diversity into stories, and instead focus simply on sharing more nuanced stories that reflect the diversity we experience in our everyday lives. It will naturally lead to more authentic storytelling and provide role models for future generations. As the old saying goes, if you can't see it, you can't be it. This requires greater commitment from many in the media industry. Whilst I applaud the recent awakening at other media operators that diversity is in equal measure important and lacking, for SBS, diversity has long been a given. It's simply the way we operate, and we do it for the right reasons. Our staff makeup has long reflected the society from which that staff is drawn. 36% of SBS team members were born overseas. Almost 42% speak a language other than English at home. More than half the staff are female. More than half the people leaders are female. More than half the senior leadership is female. 3.5% of staff are Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander. Our focus at SBS does and must go beyond diversity. Diversity unharnessed is just a bunch of people who are different. But diversity harnessed delivers inclusion. And inclusion can and should be the spark that fires Australia to greater heights. And now I'd like to talk to you about something that I'm particularly passionate about. As those of you here tonight know better than I, language is intertwined and deeply connected with culture. We see a growing understanding of the power of communicating with people in their first language. This is not just about helping new migrants settle into a new life in a new country. That is, of course, important. It's also about helping people maintain their culture through their language and pass it on to their future generations. That's why we're investing more in multilingual services than ever before in the history of the organisation. Earlier this year, we announced a stronger focus on subtitling so that multicultural communities can enjoy programs in their first language with a focus on Australian-made SBS stories. The Chinese collection on SBS On Demand offers Mandarin-speaking audiences a growing selection of SBS original television documentaries, dramas and current affairs, shows with Chinese subtitles. We have a similar collection with Arabic subtitles. We're going to expand this offer to cover more languages. Tonight I'm pleased to announce that to support this investment in more in-language content, next year we will launch in-language login and navigation for SBS On Demand, a first for any media operator in the country. This new feature will significantly extend the utility of our in-language capabilities beyond our traditional and outstanding radio offering. For the first time, audiences will be able to create an SBS On Demand user account in a language other than English and enjoy all of our video content in that language in one spot. These new services are undoubtedly of benefit to new Australians, but will also support the needs of a rapidly ageing population. We know that as people get older, they tend to revert to their first language. It's important that we ensure that older Australians remain connected to Australian society and continue to have a valued place within it. Now, as I close, I'd really like to thank you for your ongoing support. All of the communities represented in this room, all of them, are vital to SBS. We always look forward for ways to connect and consult and communicate with you. Do not be shy. Our hope is for a country to have a deeper understanding of Indigenous and multicultural Australia and a greater, more nuanced reckoning with the complexity, joy and opportunity of a more inclusive Australia. You all have an influential voice, and I do hope that in discussions about SBS and our contribution, you will continue to be powerful supporters of the role we play for all Australians. Thank you.